Hello. Today I'm going to show how I set up a rig for the upper body, especially for the arms, to show full arm motion and body turns. In a number of the rigs that come with Anime Studio, the character's arm motions don't necessarily allow you to do full arm motion. I have another video where I show explicitly how to do the elbow. Here I'm just going to do the basics, and you can tweak it with advanced contours using SmartBones. Okay, so first I'm just showing the bones. It's just a standard type of rig with two bones in the torso, collarbones, an upper arm and a lower arm bone, and I assume that you're familiar with the basic rigging, so I'm not going to go over that. The next thing I want to show is a reference layer that I use. It's very helpful for setting up the rig, and I have lines that show where the elbows should be. That just helps me align the bones when I'm putting the bones out, and where the end of my arm will be. Then I have the circles for the shoulders and the elbows. The diameter of the circles are the width of the arm at that point. I've found these circles to be very helpful when setting up the bones for the full rotation. And notice that the center of the bone is at the center of the circle. Now I can draw a circle that way by pressing the Alt, and the circle will be drawn in the center. So let me just show you the idea. I move my cursor toward the top of that bone, press Alt and Shift, and now it allows me to draw a circle that I can move and adjust to whatever that diameter of the joint is at that point. The other thing that you should notice is that I have two lines that I use as a reference, and what that will be about is when I do the body turn, I want the arms, the center of rotation, to come in so that it looks like the body's turning sideways, and also when the arm is rotated up, I want the center of rotation to actually come in and up. And if you actually look at your shoulders, that's what you'll see happening. So those reference lines just help me position the bones easily. Now let me show the construction of the body itself. I keep the torso, or I'm calling it the body here. You can see it has a curve where that shoulder joint is. That allows the rotation to work very nicely. Now let me turn off the visibility so that you can see the points a little bit better. I just have points at the bottom and ones in the center, a couple near the waist, just near the armpit or underneath it, and at the shoulder extents, and then a couple right above the shoulder. That helps me align the direction of the line as it enters the shoulder, and then the neck. You, of course, can add any number of other points that you want to get whatever shape you want, but this is what I consider the basics necessary to get the nice movement. Okay, so now let me show you the lower arms. I'm going to turn the body visibility on and now show you the lower arm here, and turn that body visibility back on. The lower arm points are just inside of the body edge. You can make it match the same, and this, when the body turn, helps to reduce the flashing kind of effect of things popping as the layers move in and out. So as you turn, you can have these points come together so that you don't really have that popping as the layers positions are changed. But as you can see, the lower arm is just 5 points. The one at the bottom here just allows you to create the curvature so that as I move it up, it looks like the arm's coming towards you, and I move it down, the arm's kind of going away from you, so that allows that kind of appearance. Okay, so now let me show you the upper arm. So in the upper arm, it's curved at the bottom, so notice this kind of construction. I do this with both of the arm joints or arm parts. The one underneath is rounded at the bottom, or rounded at the place where you're connecting. What that allows is that as I move the bone, these points will track along this curve. Now that's where the reference circles became very helpful. By using the reference circles, I know where to put the points of the upper arm, and I put them right on. Let me go ahead and select this area here. I put the points right on this reference circle and adjust the curvature so it has that circular curve. What that allows then is as the bone rotates, the points will track right along that circle. So now let me come up to the top and do a similar thing, and what I'm going to do is just show you the upper arm in terms of its points. The upper arm has, again, those 3 points at the bottom, and I've just got 2 points that are near the armpit, if you will, and then we have 3 points, actually. It's hard to see that third point. That third point, actually I've forgotten, there isn't a third point there. I have that middle point actually touching the circle here. Let me kind of explain that a little bit more. So because the arm, when you have a drawn arm, the armpit doesn't come all the way up to the center of rotation. I have that center point put on the circle. You'll see as I move the bone, let me zoom out and show what that looks like. So I'm just going to rotate that bone, and now you'll see that what will happen is we have the color of the arm showing, and it goes to the circle. Okay, let me talk about the binding that I use. For the arm parts, like the left lower arm, I bind all of these. I use a combination of both layer binding and point binding. For the arms, the lower arms, I bind them to the lower bones. For the upper arms, I bind them to the upper bones, as you'd expect. For the body, the torso, I use point binding. So the shoulder points, the points around the shoulder, I bind them to the collarbone. And for the points at the bottom, I bind them to the bone around the midsection. So I don't really have any points bound to this upper bone, except for the center point around the neck. And on the right side, again, I'm binding the points around the shoulder, including underneath the arm. Now for the reference layer, you don't have to bind that to anything, but it helps as you're actually doing the smart bones and movements to bind them. And so you can see that for the points on the elbow circle, I bind those points to the lower arms. The points on the upper shoulder circle, I bind to the upper arm. And then the reference lines, I bind to the midsection. They could be bound to this lower bone if you want to, but just to help in the construction. And for these reference line up at the upper shoulder, I bind those to the collarbones. Okay, so now let me turn off the reference layer and show what this basic construction looks like straight out of the box without using any smart bone changes. So I can move the arms around, and look, as the shoulder moves up, I can see that I have a fairly nice extension that looks fairly realistic of that shoulder. I do have what I like, and you may not like it, it depends, this overlapping kind of appearance for the arm. As I move it around. So that's part of what I like. And as I flip the shoulder up, we can see it has that elbow, and you can see these points right here. As I zoom in, the points are tracking nicely along that circle. Of course, if you want to get more advanced and have this look like a more realistic elbow joint, you can deform them with the smart bone kind of motion. That just means that you have to set things up a little bit more. And this is straight out of the construction. So you have a pretty nice movement right with that construction. Okay, let me show you a little bit about the constraints that I'm using. Specifically around the lower arm. If you'll notice that for the lower arm, I have a negative 360 to 360 constraints. And the reason for that is explained in my other tutorial about the full motion. But it allows you to flip the arm around the top or around the bottom and easily create the animation. For the upper arm, I'm going with a negative 230 and a 130. It's not quite as easy to make the animations, and I'll explain that in a minute, to flip all the way around, but because the shoulder doesn't usually do a windmill type of thing, it could, and so I can show you how to do that animation, but in general it just moves up and down, whereas the lower arm, for my animations anyway, I found that sometimes I may want to move them back and forth in a bent type of position. Of course, you can use the squash and stretch scaling, and I'm doing that at 1.5 for this one. The other constraints, I do have constraints for my collarbones and the other bones that you can set them however you want, but the ones that I wanted to show in particular was the constraint of the lower arm going from negative 360 to 360, and the upper arm going in toward the neck, really is the way you can kind of think about it. Okay, now let me just show you the negative 360 and 360, the kind of animation that this allows. Just real quickly, you can see that it rotates around the top or swings through the bottom, either way. So that's the reason that I'm doing that. Now for the shoulder joint, I don't expect the arm to be moving over the top and all the way around in a windmill type of fashion very often. So I didn't use the negative 360, 360 constraint. But what if I want to have that windmill kind of operation? Notice that I can't just take the upper arm and swing it all the way around because the bone constraint stops it there. So what will I do? First, what I want to do is I'm going to pick some time that I think it would take to get to that top place, and I will swing the bone up to that position, and I've set now my first keyframe. So as it goes up to that place. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at the position of the bone just before it hits that, and we can see the amount of change that it has. And then I'm going to go to the next frame and swing the bone all the way around to basically that same amount, but make sure the collarbone is how I want it. And so now as it moves, we can see it kind of swing through that in a natural fashion. Now if I don't swing it here with this extra keyframe, then what will happen is the bone will look like it'll swing back down. So that's why I add this extra keyframe, so it looks like it's going over the top. And then once I look at how long that is, I have to figure out my spacing to get down to the bottom. So let's see what that would look like. So now it looks kind of like it's going all the way around. The other point to notice is that it seems to kind of pause at the top. And so what we can do is change this to linear, and you'll get a little bit smoother behavior, but you will have to tweak this a little bit, and that's why for the elbows I use that negative 360, 360, so that I don't have to use these intermediate keyframes and everything, and animation is a little bit more natural. Okay, so that's the basic body setup, And so what I'm going to show now is how I do the smart bone actions to get the full body turn and the shoulder tweaked a little bit. As I move it up here, you see that we don't have the stroke really where it ought to be, and the shoulder looks kind of crazy over here. So we're going to fix that some, and then we'll hook in the body turn as well. Okay, so let's look at the shoulder joint, and probably the position that shows the worst of the joint is right here in the upper arm position when it's raised straight above his head. We see this is not smooth, and it's a little out here, and we have this line coming down. So that's what we're going to fix with the smart bones. So let me go ahead and bring up the right upper arm, and I'm just going to use 48 frames here, and I'm going to rotate the upper arm bone all the way to the topmost position. Now what I want to do is I'm going to turn on this reference frame, and here's that place where I've got those two lines, and I'm going to move the upper arm bone to that position so that the tip of it is at that intersection, so that the bone is moved in. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the body, and if you look, these 3 points right here around the shoulder, I'm not going to get the one that's at the very top that forms the neck, or the one that's underneath the armpit. I'm just going to take those 3 bones, and I'm going to select the translation tool, and I'm going to move them up so that they fit that reference circle nicely. And then I'm just going to go to the right upper arm, and I'm going to move that center point and the part of the shoulder that has the contour, the stroke, so that it fits there. Now that's all I'm going to do for right now, and go back to the main line and show kind of what that looks like now. So now as I rotate the bone, we can still tweak a little bit here, but we've got a much nicer movement of that inner part. So let me go back to the last frame here, and you notice the actual changes don't seem to happen until you click on that layer. Let me rotate, or actually go to the frame where the body is pointing straight up, so I can see it's a little bit on the inside, so I might want to tweak that a little bit. Let me go to it to where it's straight up, and I'm going to tweak that point a little bit out here, and then I'm going to tweak this up a little bit, and now we can see the kind of motion that you have. Now notice that it'll move away here, so I'm going to tweak that around the 24th frame. And so we've got, and you might tweak it a little bit here. That's up to you. You can do that tweaking, but you can see with not much change, we've got a nice shoulder movement. And personally, I do want this overlapping in certain places so that you get a little bit of depth to the character. But you can see with just very little change, you have a nice movement of the shoulder joint. Now, of course, you would want to do the smart bone adjustments for the second part of the smart bone. And for the lower arm, you actually don't need to do any smart bone adjustments at all, or at least for the basic kind of thing. Again, you can do, if you want nice contours that look more like a realistic elbow, you can do that. So the next thing I want to do is go to the body turn. Before I do the body turn, I thought I'd also show the other thing is, again, there's a little bit of tweaks that you might want to do, but notice that this nice motion of the shoulder, and again, you can tweak it a little bit if you want it, don't want it to go out that far, but you can see that body kind of position, you can see it's moving more like a natural shoulder joint, and again, you can tweak that. And that motion comes because of that point that we have underneath the armpit, so you can move it however you'd like. So for the body turn, I'm actually going to show the second part, because I usually like body turn to my left, or your viewer's left, first, and body turn to the right. Since I've done the character's right shoulder, I'm going to show how that's affected with the body turn to make sure that when the body turns they don't come apart. So again, I'm going to use 48 frames here, and I'm going to rotate the body turn bone. I'm going to turn on the reference layer so that we can see these intersection points. And again, what I'm going to do is move this body in. Now, I'm going to actually press Shift so that the position is just moving only horizontally. Same thing for the other bone. And I'm going to press Shift and move it in. Now, of course, now you see that the points, the shoulder points are out for the body. And so what I want to do is move those in. And if you'll notice, if I zoom out and I click on the body, we also have the body points here that need to move. And I also am going to have the center of the body move to the right. So here what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select everything, just as an easy way of doing this. You may want to do it differently, and then translate, and then again I'm going to press Shift so that I'm constraining that to be horizontal. And so what we have, I've just moved it in just enough so it will match with that reference circle. And then do something similar for the other one. Now, if we notice, maybe that's a little bit too much for the center, so we can tweak that. But I'm going to do the same thing for, oops, didn't mean to do that. And select these points. Now I'm just going to select, I'm not going to select the center ones, just the outside edge, and then choose the translation tool and move those in like that. Okay, so that's what we have for there, and you can tweak those as you'd like. So I think for mine, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move these out a little bit more, just those points there. Maybe move individual points a little bit so it's more straight. And the collar, I'm going to move a little bit that way, and move this shoulder back here a little bit. And in the center there. So maybe a little bit that way. Now, the thing that you'll notice, we've got that kind of motion that's twisting, and if I were to, now what I would like to do is rotate the arm and see that everything works properly. So you need to make sure that you check that part. That's the key thing that we want to make sure. I'm going to undo that motion because I really didn't want to be part of the SmartBone action. But the key thing that you want to be aware of is that right now the left arm, the character's left arm, is in front of the body. I actually have done that on purpose, and the reason that I've done that is so that when I turn that body, I may want to have something that looks like his arms are kind of crossed in front of them, even though he's turning to that side. So that's maybe the reason for that. Now, in most cases, you will want this left arm to go behind the body, and so I would just bring those left arms, the positions behind the body, and then you would want to change the way that that body part looks right here. So that's how I'm doing the body and the body turns. Again, you would want to tweak these a little bit with the SmartBones, but I just wanted to show the technique of how that's done and what we're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do in my rig here. Hope you enjoyed it.